One of the things that Chad has expressed to me was to talk a little bit about myself and how I got into the beer business and my beer story. I am originally from the East Coast. I grew up right outside New York City and made my way around various parts of the New York City area until I wandered up to Vermont. When I was in Vermont, many of you may know, there's some really good breweries there. At the time when I was there, they weren't there, although the state was producing some beer. So when I was up there, I always worked during the summer. And the very first summer that I did not have a position, a bunch of my buddies, we all went to college around New England, so we decided to go to an event called the Boston Beer Fest. Many of you have been to beer festivals, good times. Well, I actually went for this time to find a job, which, believe it or not, back in the early 90s was unusual. There weren't that many breweries. The original beer boom hadn't started yet, and people would look at you funny. I actually offered to be an unpaid intern for breweries, and they told me no. I was kind of shocked, but it ended up working out anyway. So there's a brewery in Boston called Harpoon that actually had a sales program. They would take interns from the surrounding Boston colleges and teach them various parts of the brewing industry. Well, at that point, I said, I live in Vermont, but I'm willing to come to Boston for the summer, and can I be an intern? So they said, sure. So when I started, I was sales and marketing, but I was actually the first ever sales and marketing intern at Harpoon to actually brew. And of course, when you become a brewing intern, they do not give you the fun jobs first. The very first thing you do, at Harpoon anyway, is kick out the mash tun. And of course, the day that they picked for me to kick out the mash tun was about 100 degrees in the shade. And they also neglected to tell me as an intern that they were going to brew another batch of IPA right after this one, so it did not have to be spotless. But they neglected to tell me that, so I went ahead and did it anyway. And I'm fairly blind without these, so I'm in a pair of shorts and brewer's boots and no glasses with a shovel. And you got about a hole about that big that you got to do about 2,000 pounds of grain out that little hole that's going to go turn into feed for a local farmer. They ended up pulling me out of the tank when I was done. I was fairly lobster, if you can imagine. I'm fairly fair-skinned to begin with, but I was fairly lobster. And they proceeded to throw me into the brewer's shower and say, you sit there for a while, and we'll come get you when we need you. So that was really my first introduction to brewing, was that. After that, they let me do various parts of the brewing process, all the way up to, they had a very old kegging system at that time, which their kegs still use old Stroh's kegs, which needed a bung. So for those of you not familiar, you get a 20-pound mallet, cork about that big, goes into a hole in the side. So you have the keg, it's lying on its side, you fill it up. You can feel how full it is by how cold the keg gets, because it's been heat washed right before that. So you're feeling it for when the temperature's right. Then you got to take the cork and hit it in right away. Should you not hit it correctly, it's kind of fun. You get a geyser of beer. So, of course, again, newbie to the brewing process, the first one I hit, a little bit on the side, didn't quite get there, had a nice little geyser of beer. I did about 20 before the brewers decided that they'd had enough and they wanted to finish that day, so they said thank you very much for your help, and proceeded to put me to the side. But but from that summer, I learned lots of great stuff about the brewing process and different things relating to that. I was actually living with a couple of buddies of mine who they were actually out of college already, but every now and again I'd show up with a free keg from work or some free beer, so they certainly liked having me around. From that, when I was at Harpoon, they were actually still a fairly small brewery. They were doing about 10,000 barrels at that point. Now they're much, much bigger, obviously. But when I graduated a year later, they still weren't quite big enough to hire me. So then I went to work for a wholesaler doing wine, spirits, and beer. Did that for a couple of years. And then I moved back to Vermont to work for a brewery called Catamount, which unfortunately did not make it through the first bust. Great beers. They had a lot of good stuff going on. They were actually one of the first breweries in Vermont, dated back to '86. And they had, again, some quality products, but the financial model wasn't good. So we kind of watch, it's one of the things we kind of watch in the brewing industry now is, as the industry gets bigger and bigger, you're hoping that everybody's got their ducks in a row when they're expanding. So worked for Catamount for roughly a year, and then things weren't going great for the brewery, so I actually got hired on by Newcastle, and that was my first taste of the import side of the business. So I actually worked for Newcastle in Florida and Colorado, and then moved to Chicago for national accounts. So I've gotten to see the beer industry for most of the United States, which has been great because it's even from here to Chicago, it's different. People have different tastes. There's different styles that kind of become more prevalent and things like that. So for that matter, it was really great to get to see different things. Since when Newcastle was purchased by Heineken, kind of changed some things. So I ended up going out of the beer business briefly, did a little bit of wine, and then back to beer, which leads me to St. Killian. So St. Killian was founded as an import company in 1983 under the name Legends. It is owned by a company that actually does a lot of distributing. I know we were talking bad about one of mine, but so they were basically the import division of a distributor. And at that point, they brought in a handful of beers. They had basically 2 people running the whole country, which is very difficult for any kind of beer company, whether it's import or craft, having that few people. Nowadays, we have added, we're roughly, besides the brands that Chad already mentioned, we also handle the Carlsberg portfolio. Crabbie's is a bigger brand for us. We also do the Bitburger portfolio, and then a handful of other breweries. So we're roughly at about 25 breweries. I do roughly 300 different SKUs of beer from England, Scotland, France, Belgium, Poland, Germany, Denmark, Kenya, New Zealand. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. But the nice thing is for us as an importing company is that we have the gamut of styles. So if you're a lager drinker, we can take care of you. If you're a stout drinker, we can take care of you. And, for me, one of the things that Chad mentioned when we were talking earlier was, my first beer. And I can remember going back to, all right, well, I'm going to stop as I was instructed. So the first beer we're trying tonight is Kronenbourg Blanc. Kronenbourg was founded in 1664. It is a brewery. It sounds German because where it is was frequently German. It's right on the border of France and Germany in an area called Alsace. The city is Strasbourg. And literally, if you're in the city on some of the cafes, you can throw a rock and hit Germany. So this particular beer is a wit. It is modeled after the Belgian styles. It is based on a recipe they found in their vaults. That the brewery's obviously been around. 1664 denotes when the brewery was founded, and so they obviously have some pretty old vaults, and they have recipes in there. So this is based on a recipe they found in the brewery. Now, one of the things you'll find with Kronenbourg Blanc is they do say citrus flavor added. One of the things I will tell you is I can't tell you what citrus flavor it is. I'd have to kill you. So we'll leave it at that. But everybody gets their kind of own flavoring from that. Just a really nice, bright, crisp version of the style, though. You do get a little bit of the haziness from the wheat. You're looking at about 5% ABV. And not very high on the IBUs. In fact, one of the guests tonight mentioned about IBUs tonight, and most of the products you're trying today are going to be in the 20s and 30s range, if that high. So you're looking it's really meant to be very drinkable and have a few of them. Any questions on this one?
What are they using for the citrus flavor?
I can't tell you. I have to kill you. It is juice.
So it's all natural, it's not
Yeah.
juice.
No, juice.
What color is it?
It's one of those colors. It's a citrus color. It's probably not the one you're thinking of. I'll tell you that. No, that's fine. Anybody else have a question? Yes. Golden, how's that? No, and one of the questions we do get about Kronenbourg is people say, beer from France? And Kronenbourg has existed for a long time, partially because of the fact that it was on the, that area was frequently German. But one of the things, and I learned this from one of a brewer that we deal with, is that according to the French, it takes a lot of really good beer to make one really good wine. So it helps to have the French brewery, because obviously they're making a lot of wine right there. One of the things I think that people don't realize about a lot of the imports that are out in the market is they're very close to their market as well, so they use local ingredients. So the barley that's used for for Kronenbourg's beers is actually coming from two places. It's coming from Alsace-Lorraine, and it's also coming from Champagne. So occasionally we will get people that say, hey, I'm getting some wine kind of notes to the beer, and that's really why, because the esters from the barley in that particular region are from areas that are heavily, wine-driven. There's lots of grapes in the area. The other thing that Kronenbourg is most famous for is they use a very specific hop for all their beers. It is used on a little basis by some craft breweries, but they're the only major brewery to use it, and that hop is called Strisselspalt. And no, I can't say that 5 times fast. But it is known as the caviar of hops. And it is only grown in Alsace-Lorraine, the region where the brewery is. So, and if you were to go to Strasbourg where the brewery is, you actually can go to the original brewery that was founded in 1664 by a gentleman named Jerome Hatt. And they still have the cellars. In fact, I had a real nice dinner in the cellar one night. So you can still go to the cellars and see where they were keeping all the kegs, which were really then the original barrels. So you're talking the 31-gallon big oak stave barrels. So, yes? Well, all of our beers pasteurized, I should say. For this particular beer, it's pasteurized, so you still get 9 months to a year out of it, no problem. Of the beers we're trying tonight, one of them is actually ageable. This is not one that I would age.
How many people in the room like wit-style beers, generally?
Well, that's a good number.
So, okay, raise your hands again if you like it. I do. If you don't like this beer, keep your hand raised. Did I confuse you? Okay, I just want to see how many people really like this beer. Let's do that. Not the same people.
No, that's great. I mean, and that's this is a newer brand for Kronenbourg. It's been available since 2008, but it's only been in the U.S. since 2012, and I think it only came into this market in the last year and a half or so. So, but yeah, so back to. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about my beer story while we're enjoying the rest of our sips of this. And, I chuckle over the trends in the beer business. I remember one of the beers I was mentioning to Chad that I remember drinking early on in my life was a brand, Coors Extra Gold, which some of you may know, some of you the younger folks in the room may not necessarily even know that product. I don't think it's around anymore. But there's plenty of beers like that. Beers come and go. So the fact, just to transition that, Kronenbourg as a brewery has been around since the year 1664, and it's not even close to being the oldest brewery in my portfolio. So, it's kind of a different thing. Craft is obviously great, and there's a lot of great breweries out there, but a lot of the craft guys wouldn't even know to do certain beers if they hadn't enjoyed some of the beers that are coming over from Europe and things like that. So we just always ask, look at different things and not necessarily, just because it's not from Missouri doesn't mean that it might not be good. So, although obviously there's some good beer coming out of here as well. I know I've enjoyed many a Schlafly. So, yes.
So, I know I've had 16. I just remember what's called 1664.
Yes. Unsays s'il vous plaît.
But it's in the green bottle. This one's in the blue.
That is the original. So that is Kronenbourg 1664 lager.
This is the Blanc, and that's the orange.
Right. Yeah. If you were to go to France right now and you really wanted a Kronenbourg, you could say you can walk anywhere and say Unsays s'il vous plaît, and they will hand you a Kronenbourg. Says is short for 16, and that's why they say that. Yes, in the back.
How does importing beer work? Do they brew it, package it there, and then
There are different ways to do that, but the majority of imported beer is done, as you said. Yeah, it's all brewed and packaged in its native country and then shipped. It'll actually, if you look at labels, it'll tell you where the beer is actually coming from. So, like one of my brands, we actually brew in one country, but they end up packaging it in another country. So it actually has to say the country where it was packaged. But yes, and then shipped over. Generally, for us, between placing, let's say we place an order for product and getting it to the United States, generally looking at about 6 weeks. Some products are less, sometimes more. But the thing you have to, one of the unique things that came out of Prohibition was the fact that every state has a right to make their own beer laws or alcohol laws. So what may work in Missouri, if most of the time for Missouri, if we get something approved federally, that works. For a state like Texas, they have their own system. So even if the federal government has approved it, we still have to do Texas. I'm sorry? It's not just Texas, though. I mean, every state has their own kind of unique laws. As a former student in Vermont, one of the stories that we like to joke about in Vermont was they made it illegal to buy somebody a drink if they already had one in their hand. So what the bars there did was everybody got a 32-ounce pitcher. So you just got your own round. And there's different things like that. When I worked in Colorado, if we were going to do a promotion in Colorado, if you wanted to put a banner up for the promotion, it had to face inside. It couldn't face out to the street. So yeah, it makes it interesting. I mean, another one of my favorite stories was in the state of Michigan. Beer coasters are illegal in the state of Michigan because it's considered an enticement to buy alcohol. But a cigarette coaster is fine. You can't even smoke in the bar now, but you can have a cigarette coaster. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that came out of Prohibition, where each state was allowed their own laws. So this next beer that we're going to try is from a brewery called Moorhouse, which is in northwest England, specifically a city called Burnley. This particular beer is called a mild. It's a very traditional British style. You're looking at about 3.5% alcohol. And I know that a lot of breweries today talk about session beers. This is the original session beer. You would go to the pub and you could drink many of these because it was only 3.5% alcohol. Yes?
Why do you think 3% alcohol? I thought it was all percent alcohol.
No, most beers vary depending on which beer it is. So the beer that we just had was 5%. This one's about 3.5%. We're going to have some different ones as we drink the other products that we have tonight. So it varies. And spirits are different, wines are different. It varies depending on each individual product. So this particular brewery is best known for being the city where the brewery is was basically the equivalent of Salem, Massachusetts. So they had witch trials and witch burnings and things like that. And so their beers are typically named after things witch-related. So you have Black Cat. They do another beer called Pendle Witch's Brew. They have another one called Blonde Witch, things like that. But it's really cool. I actually know some guys from the area where the brewery is, and there's actually a hill in the town that if you look in the correct way, you can see the outline of a witch on a broom flying away. And there's lots of pictures. You can go on the internet now and look for Pendle. It's called Pendle Witch, and you can look and see the outline of the witch. But they did do witch trials there and things like that. So it's very famous for that part of England. But again, for this, you're gonna some real nice malts. A little bit of darker malt in there. But again, just real low alcohol, so meant to have quite a few of them while you're in the pub.
I'm curious what everybody gets on the nose. Like, what do you smell in here? Because it's very different. Licorice, chocolate. What is that? I get a lot of chocolate tobacco. Like pipe tobacco or something like that, personally.
Definitely, yeah, no, it's definitely got all of that coming off the nose. It's a real nice brewery. One of the kind of more unique things that you see in the UK that you don't see here is they have what's called a tied house. So what that means is the brewery will actually own its own pubs. So there's about 6 or 8 pubs around the Burnley metro area. It's not that big of a city, but around the area where you can go, and all the beers they'll have will be strictly Moorhouse products.
That's where we're headed in this state,
You're,
this country.
yeah, you're gonna see. Well, there's some breweries trying that. I mean, they're definitely trying. I know that, but right now it's not totally legal, but they're definitely trying.
We've actually been on a tour here in St. Louis of the old tied houses.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's great if you go to Chicago, you can still see, you can tell which ones were the Stroh's pubs because they have built into the cement, they had a Stroh's globe around. Yeah, you can go check that out in Chicago. So,
What does everybody think about this one? You guys like this one? No, not so much? Kind of, a little bit?
yeah,
It's very dry.
mixed views. This is very democratic, Chad. I'm impressed. So right now I live in Chicago, and obviously we have a very similar beer boom going on to what is going on here in Missouri as well. The state of Illinois is over 100 breweries now, which is mind-boggling because if you go back about 10 years, it was pretty much Goose Island, Two Brothers, and maybe 1 or 2 other ones. So the fact that there's over 100 now, it's very similar. I mean, you look to various countries in Europe, and every town had their or region had their breweries, and if you even go to Belgium, there's a brewery on every corner. So it's not that big of a country, but so you get to enjoy things like that. But it's nice to remember that there are great beers coming from all over the world, so that you can try them out and learn new styles. For how many of you is this the first time you ever had a mild? Yeah, so a small number, yeah. Okay. Civil Life has a mild? Okay. And how is it more? There's more hoppy, or to this one than theirs? Okay. No fruit added to this one, I swear. Any other questions on this one?
This is a good beer for people that like malty beer, like in the summer, you go to like camping or on a float trip. It's a good beer because it doesn't fill you up. You get all that maltiness, but it's not real heavy. You know, I would definitely drink this in July for sure. I was outside, so I don't know about you guys. I think miles are good for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy it for that. But I mean, just going back, as you go around to different breweries, because it sounds like a lot of you do that, try to expand beyond the style you normally would enjoy. I'm a porter and stout guy, but I find myself liking wit beers now because I can drink this one. But you can easily find some great Belgians out there. There are different things like that. I even have some fruit beers in my portfolio that have schooled me in learning different styles than I normally would have consumed. So you definitely, as your personal journey, as you're getting around to whichever breweries you go to, or coming here to Cicero's and enjoying beers, don't just try don't just have a regular. Find something on the menu you haven't had before.
So how is what you're drinking different than just people call Radler?
Well, Radler is a combination of, it's usually a combination of lager and soda. So a typical Radler is about 2.5% alcohol. Whereas this is a beer. It's made to be a beer. So a Radler is a combination of like a shandy would be the English version of a Radler. Radler primarily German, shandy primarily British. Correct. Yeah, it's those are very popular all over the place. I mean, I get some strange looks every now and again. I'm a big soda drinker, and I drink a lot of Coke. So I'll sometimes have a Pilsner with a Coke back, and people are like, "What? You can't drink those together." But if you go to Germany, actually, there's a company making they make a Pilsner with a Coke in it, with cola in it. So it's a little different. You also, if you go to various countries, people will put their own additives in a beer. You'll frequently see like what's the in a Shirley Temple? Is it like whatever the syrup is? Grenadine, yes, thank you. So you'll frequently, in a lot of the UK and some other parts of the world, you'll frequently see people that will actually add grenadine to their beer. It's not for everybody, but you know, it's something different, and people do enjoy it. So it's, you know, you can look at it how you want it. But again, it's getting out of your kind of comfort zone with beer.
Well, it's kind of like, just what you were just saying as an example, it's kind of like all the, you know, the popular Berliner Weiss style, which historically started with, you know, adding an essence into it. It's a very similar thing. A lot of the craft breweries in the States are making Berliner Weisses and they're adding some kind of a fruit juice to them to kind of emulate that. So I don't know if you guys all like Berliner Weisses, but you see that a lot. Like Prussia that Forehands does, they add the passion fruit to it. I think they're going to be doing a different one this year. So
Tend to have a good tartness to them. Great summertime drink, and you know, you can do, you can pretty much do whatever. Beer nowadays has gotten to the point where if you like something, you can pretty much do it to your beer. You can find a way. I mean, I know at a variety of the beer fest, people have their Randalls now, and they're running things through coffee beans or cocoa nibs and things like that. So you can certainly do certain things like that without having all the equipment. Just strain it through. I don't foresee it, but I'm sure there is out there. There's got to be a tea beer out there. Somebody's probably made it. I haven't. Satie, right, from Dogfish, I think, was one of those.
Did hop and tea
Okay.
with a tropical tea last year.
Oh, all right.
Really good.
So yeah, so I mean, if you like your beer a certain way, you should drink it that way. That's what I've learned, and I've gotten to drink a few of them out there, as I'm sure most of you have as well. So you just make yourself happy. It's the nice thing about beer. There's, as Chad and I were talking about earlier, there's thousands and thousands of breweries now, so you can pretty much, if you can't find the beer that you like, you're not trying hard enough. Oh, there you go. Make it yourself. That's another way to do it. I have it a little easier than you. I get to just go sign beer out of the warehouse. Not at the moment, but who knows, if our sales build up in Missouri enough from this, maybe I'll get to hire somebody. But yeah, no, I mean it is one of the great things about beer. It's obviously very social and things like that. So you can go to your local pub and enjoy it. You can be hanging out with friends, family. Just always can have a beer. One of the crazy things that Chad and I talked about beforehand was the fact that he had a beer with his dad when he was younger, knee high or so. I actually had a very different drinking experience growing up because my father's actually allergic to beer. So yeah, that's what I asked. He's allergic to alcohol, chocolate, and aged cheese. I was like, that's my whole diet. It's gone. So, you know, I came by my alcohol experiences via the friend way rather than the family way. So it's, you know, you get to enjoy your beer differently. And that's probably why I had a Coors Extra Gold rather than Olympia the first time. Because I was dependent on somebody's older brother. What's that, Olympia?
Yeah, I think I was probably 1980 or something. I was probably
It's the water, right?
yeah, I guess so.
You know, and it's fun to see some of like the old advertising from those. I heard there's a keychain or a bottle opener collector. I've done my share of coasters and glassware and things like that. You know, I'm trying to work some of those out of my house now. You definitely can find some cool things that are out from the beer industry that are out and about in there. Oh, I do. Sorry. So we started in France. We went to England. Sorry, we went to England, and now we have jumped back across the channel to Belgium. So this particular brewery is called Corsendonk. We're trying their dobbel right now. The Priory of Corsendonk was founded in 1398, lasted till the late 1700s when the Archduke at the time decided that there didn't need to be a priory there anymore. So it basically was out of existence for a brief period of time, and then the town actually asked a brewing family to come and restart the brewery. So the brewery is actually in the town of, it's called Oud Turnhout. Don't ask me to say that multiple times, please. It's actually about an hour east of Antwerp. Most people, when they think of Belgium, really think of Brussels, but there's obviously breweries throughout Belgium, so you can pretty much go any corner of Belgium and find a local brewery. There's a huge number of them. For those of you that aren't too familiar with Belgian beers, the story I always like to talk about is how a double is a double. And how that comes about is when the monks were first brewing the beer, they were fasting, but beer was not considered part of the fast. So they could drink as much beer as they wanted, and that's how the term liquid bread came about. Because you could keep drinking beer all day and you weren't breaking your fast. So what they found was, as they added more malt into the recipe, that it became a little sweeter and also became more alcoholic. This beer comes in, we were at 3.5 before, we're jumping up to 7.5 for this one. And it really gets that color from the darker malts that they're using. It just uses a lot more roasted and chocolate malts in that. But you're going to get some interesting fruit flavors off of that as well. You're already on to working on the next beer. He's on the next one already? We're pouring the next one already. Yeah. Okay. All right, so again, doubled the malt level, triple, same way, quad, even more. And that really, but if you go back and look at like the various texts that were written by monks and things like that then, the beautiful illustrations, a lot of that was going on while people were drinking and drinking heavily. So Belgium is really one of the true destination countries for beer. It sounds like you do road trips here around the Midwest. If you do get a chance to go somewhere on a beercation outside of the U.S., I really recommend Belgium. You can go to a variety of cities and just bike. You get a bicycle and you can go and hit a whole bunch of breweries in a very short period of time. Sorry. Didn't want to mislead anybody. Anytime. Yeah, pretty much. You're pretty much spring to fall. You're pretty good. I'm trying to remember. There's a huge beer festival there, and that's really would be the time to go, because brewers from around Belgium come for that festival. But I don't remember when the time frame is on it. That's a lot of Europe. It's not just France. I have a Polish brewery, and it seems like they took the whole summer off. So. I'm still not sure what happened there. We'll get a phone call. Hey, we stopped brewing for the year. What? You can't do that.
What does everybody think of Corsendonk? Like it? Has anybody ever had a beer from this brewery before? Nope.
Of all of their beers, they're best known for their Christmas beer. I don't know if you've had that one, but the famous beer writer Michael Jackson considered that to be the best Christmas beer in the world. It was their Christmas beer. Yes. All right. So as we climb up the alcohol ladder, people have described this particular beer as a few different styles. I refer to it primarily as a Scotch ale. There are people that call it a barley wine, and some other people that even call it a wee heavy. But this brewery is called Orkney. The beer you're drinking is called Skull Splitter. It is 8.5%. Skull Splitter was named for the 7th Viking Earl of Orkney. For those of you that are not familiar with Orkney, it is an island off the north coast of Scotland. It's on the way to Norway, so it's a little bit out there, and there is a brewery there. So the actual name of the Viking Earl was Thorfinn Einarsson, just in case you're making notes. So really good example of style, tremendous barley, but you are going to get some Scotch notes in that from the fact that they do roast some of the barley with peat moss to get that flavor. Now, they're not actually barrel aging this, it's just they're using peat moss as a fuel when they're roasting some of the barley. Now, like most British breweries, they do a variety of styles, reds, browns, stouts. They do some barrel aging as well. They've won a bunch of awards in the British brewing community for their work that they do over there. But my personal favorite is, like, if you, and he's not on here. Oh, crap, you got the new case. The old case has the logo on him. It's, if you ever see the 4-pack of Skull Splitter, it's this big burly guy with an axe. It's really kind of fun. Is it? Oh, there you go. So,
Yeah, he looks very Viking.
yes, he looks very Viking. They were basically fighting off the Vikings on a regular basis, trying to steal their little piece of rock.
I'm Scottish, but of Viking descent.
Oh, all right. So you were successful.
No, we came ready for Scottish women, and we weren't allowed to leave.
There you go.
Good job, Daniel.
What part of Scotland?
Clan God. So, north in the Highlands.
Okay. My clan is also, I'm Scottish heritage as well. My clan is from the Inverness area, and the Davidsons were on the wrong side of a battle, so they ended up everywhere but Scotland. So, there's still some Keiths in Scotland. I know a couple.
We just signed a treaty.
Yeah.
We lost the battle in the year 600. We signed a treaty in 1992.
Nice. Hey, you signed a treaty. There's always hope, I guess. See, we were on the wrong side of the McDonald's, and I don't think we're ever going to win that. They're way ahead. No. But yeah, as we were just talking about, so Scotland's a really interesting country. You got the lowlands and the highlands. There's a huge difference between, it's all flat and then up to, you get, once you get into the highlands, very mountainous. And the Scots are interesting for beer because all the hops in the UK come from southern England, and the English built a little wall to keep the Scots out. So, well, Hadrian's is the better known of the two. So it's always funny to hear that some of the Scots are brewing with hops because they couldn't always get them. So they frequently made beer in different ways besides that. Barley was no problem. If there was a sheep beer, they'd be great. They have lots of those too. Not in that. Get your mind out of the gutter. We're not talking about that. So again, really very malty, little sweetness, but higher alcohol. So nice in the sniffer. Great time for great finishing beer. Great with desserts. Real nice with desserts. Any questions on this one? It's been awfully quiet back there. Just please raise your hand.
We've had this beer on our menu for a long time. It sells really well. It's a good classic beer. We've had it on our bottle menu for a long time. I just, I'm curious how many people have had it before today. Few? And did anybody realize today that they like this beer? It's terrible. I don't. You didn't ask me that.
I said I have a lot of beers in my portfolio. So if you don't like this one, I'm sure I can find one for you. If you did, I'd be great. I wouldn't have to work. Started kind of lower and worked our way up. It's very easy to forget that you're enjoying something and with this last one that you're going to try, it's very easy to forget that there's alcohol in some of these things. So be careful.
This one does not taste like 8.5%.
No, it's really well brewed. They do a great job on their. on their work.
6 or 6.5 maybe.
It's 8.5. 8.5. Oh yeah,
Maybe 6 or 6.5.
right. You know, his Monty Python. We've gone back to Scotland. This is very different. So this is called Crabbie's Spiced Orange Alcoholic Ginger Beer. Yes. The big difference compared to other ginger beers that are on the market, well, there's two. One, we use real ginger. Most of the non-alcoholics do not. And the second one is we have alcohol, and most of them do not. So this is 4.8%. It's very easily used in a cocktail. It's very easily drank straight. I actually tend to put mine over ice, but that's easily enough done. And you can just enjoy it. It's great. Crabbie's has become quickly one of our biggest sellers. Yes? I call mine a loaded mule. Yeah, so my actual my preferred drink is I actually drink what I call a Crabbie. We're trying the orange today. We also have the original, and then the raspberry will be coming shortly. I call mine a Crabbie patty, and I take so I take a shaker glass, fill it with ice, shot of Irish whiskey, and put the Crabbies on top of that. I don't know. That's up to him. So Crabbie's is a little different as a company. Crabbie's is actually not a brewery. They're a distillery. So this is actually for ginger beer as opposed to ginger ale. Ginger ale and ginger beer are different. Ginger ale produced more like a beer. Ginger ale produced more like a beer. Ginger beer is actually distilled. So we take real ginger from the Far East. It's steeped for a minimum of 6 weeks. And then they turned it into the lovely concoction we have here. It's actually interesting because the initial product, they actually have to tone down. This is what you're drinking now is 4.8%. The initial product is actually 14. So they tone it down a bit. We can't legally sell 14% ginger beer here. We get in trouble. The spice level doesn't change too much, but it is just a thing where they have to tone it down a bit.
Why can't you sell it?
One, they won't give it to us. The second one was they actually have a barrel-aged version. It's not considered barrel-aged for the brands, but they age it for a bit, and they call that the reserve line, and they're currently, the initial version of that, they've decided they didn't like, so they've gone back to the drawing board and they're tweaking it. And I don't know if we're going to see it here or not, but the original version I liked a lot, but they haven't given it to us again, so we'll have to see. But yes, you had a question.